Well, it's that time again. Time to dive into some financial figures, right?
Absolutely. And this time we've got Axis Bank's results for the quarter and 9 months ending December 31st, 2024. It's quite a packed report, actually.
Okay, so let's start with the big picture. What's the headline?
The core operating profit is up 14% year on year and 5% quarter on quarter. So that's a pretty good start. The profit after tax also saw a 4% increase year on year.
That does sound positive, but how does it look over the 9-month period?
Well, the consolidated return on assets for the 9 months is at 1.8%, and the return on equity is at 16.9%. So, yeah, seems like they're in a pretty strong position.
Okay, so things are looking good on the profitability front. But what about their income?
Right. So their net interest income grew by 9% year on year, and the net interest margin is at 3.93%. That's pretty solid.
Okay. And any changes in fees that they are collecting?
Fee income is up by 6% year on year, and retail fees alone grew by 5%. Actually, the granular fees are making up about 94% of all total fees.
That's a pretty significant chunk. So it seems like they've got a good spread of income sources.
Exactly. And their total deposits on a quarterly average balance basis grew by 13% year on year and 3% quarter on quarter.
So people are putting more money in. Is that what you're saying?
Seems like it. Term deposits specifically saw a jump of 19% year on year and 5% quarter on quarter.
Okay, so deposits are up, but what about lending? Are they giving out more loans?
Yeah, their net advances grew by 9% year on year and 1% quarter on quarter. And retail loans saw an 11% year on year increase.
Okay, it seems like there's growth across the board, I guess.
Yeah, and SME loans also grew by 15% year on year and 3% quarter on quarter. Even their corporate loans, though gross of interbank participatory certificates, saw a 4% year on year growth.
That's a lot of numbers. But what about their capital position? Are they well capitalized?
Actually, their overall capital adequacy ratio is at 17.01%, and their CET1 ratio is at 14.61%. They've also had a net accretion to CET1 of 87 basis points in the 9 months and 49 basis points in this quarter.
Okay, that sounds like a very strong financial footing. What else is there that's interesting?
Well, they are a major player in merchant acquiring with a market share of 20%. And actually, their incremental share in the last year is at 27%.
So they are really expanding in that sector too.
And also, they are the number one player in the UPI payer PSP space, with a market share of around 30%.
Wow, so they are really making some serious moves in the digital payment sector, right?
Definitely. Oh, and get this, they launched a $500 million climate loan in partnership with the International Finance Corporation. That's pretty big news.
Yeah, that's huge. So they're also focusing on sustainable finance, I guess?
Exactly. They're aiming to finance green and blue projects, which will foster growth and create jobs in India. That's what they said.
It's interesting to see a bank moving towards these kinds of initiatives.
Absolutely. It's not all about just numbers, right? There's also a new women's savings account designed exclusively for women's financial needs with personalized investments and health benefits.
That's a really good move. I mean, they're catering to different segments.
They've also partnered with Alliance Network India for digital payments. So that's another step in the digital space.
Well, it sounds like they have been super busy. What about recognition? Did they win any awards or anything?
Oh, yeah, they won Best Indian Bank at the Financial Times Bank of the Year Awards and a bunch of innovation awards for AI, digital channels, and onboarding.
So they're not just doing well financially, but also winning awards for their innovative approaches. That's impressive.
Right. And the MD and CEO also stated they've been focused on expanding their presence with new branches, especially in the rural areas.
Okay, so basically they're expanding physically and digitally.
Precisely. Their focus is on digital and rural areas, as well as inclusivity and sustainability. They've actually even re-emphasized their customer-first approach through a new campaign.
Okay, that seems to wrap up the main highlights. So any key takeaways from all this data?
Well, it is pretty clear they are really focusing on growth across all their business segments with solid numbers and a clear strategy for the future.
Before we move on, I think it's a good time to remind our listeners, if you're enjoying this, please like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more great content.
Great idea. So moving on, their operating expenses actually moderated to 1% year on year and even declined by 5% quarter on quarter.
So they are managing their costs well too, I see.
Exactly, and that's helping their core operating profit. They've also been focused on average deposits, and their CASA ratio remains the best amongst large peer banks.
So their deposits are not just growing, but they're also high quality deposits.
That's it. On average, their total deposits grew by 9% year on year and 1% quarter on quarter on a month end balance basis.
And what about the loan growth across different segments?
Well, retail loans grew by 11% year on year and 1% quarter on quarter, while small business banking loans grew by 20% and 4%. So, pretty significant.
And what about the overall asset quality? Is that holding up?
Right. So their gross non-performing asset ratio is at 1.46%. That's actually declined by 12 basis points year on year. And their net non-performing asset ratio is at 0.35%, flat year on year and quarter on quarter.
Those are good numbers. Their asset quality seems very stable.
Yeah, and their provision coverage ratio is healthy at 76%. On an aggregated basis, it's at 151%.
It seems like they have quite a safety cushion there. What about their digital banking?
Well, Open by Axis Bank remains among the world's top-rated mobile banking apps. They have around 15 million monthly active users.
That's a huge user base. So their digital investments are really paying off, right?
Absolutely. And the mobile app and their Axis Pay app have about 14 million non-Axis Bank customers too. So their reach is significant.
Okay, what else is important in this detailed report?
They have about 29.3 million customers on WhatsApp banking, which shows their focus on digital customer service.
And what about their credit card business?
Their credit card customer base has a market share of about 14%, and their retail card spends grew by 11% year on year.
Okay, so there's growth in credit cards and digital banking.
And not only that, but their key subsidiaries are also delivering strong performance. For example, the 9 months profit of their domestic subsidiaries is about 1,401 crore rupees, up 26% year on year.
That's a significant contribution to the overall growth.
Yeah, Axis Finance's profit after tax grew by 20%, Axis AMC grew by 27%, and Axis Securities saw a whopping 86% jump in profits, also for the 9 months.
Okay, it seems like every part of their operation is doing well then.
Well, almost. The operating profit for the quarter grew by 15% year on year to about 10,534 crore rupees. And their core operating profit grew by 14%.
It's good to see their core business is really driving that growth, I guess.
And their net interest income grew by 9%, while their fee income grew by 6%, and retail fees make up 71% of their total fee income.
It's really like they're focusing on the granular aspects of their business.
Exactly. Their net profit grew by 4% year on year to 6,304 crore rupees. And for the 9-month period, their operating profit grew by 18% and the net profit grew by 9%.
Okay, so their growth seems pretty consistent. Anything on the asset quality front?
Their reported gross NPA and net NPA levels were 1.46% and 1.35% respectively. And they recovered about 1,300 crore rupees from written off accounts in this quarter.
Okay, and what about network expansion?
So they added 130 branches in this quarter, which brings their total distribution network to about 5,706 domestic branches and extension counters.
Okay, that is a pretty big network, isn't it?
And they also have about 14,476 ATMs and cash recyclings across the country. So they're definitely reaching a lot of customers.
All right, it's pretty clear they have done well on every front. So to sum it up, what do you see for their future outlook?
Well, they are well capitalized, have a strong digital presence, diverse revenue streams, and are committed to sustainable growth. So I guess they're definitely positioning themselves to be a dominant player for the future.
Well, it looks like a really solid performance overall for Axis Bank. So anything else?
I think that's all the main highlights from this report. Any thoughts from your end?
Well, it's a lot to digest. But what stands out is how well they're performing across all areas, from core banking to digital payments and sustainable finance. So, what's the next big thing in banking?
Well, that's a good question for next time. Maybe we should end on that note for today.